Hello, dear friends. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Enjoy watching. The first story.
Hi, I don't really post on Reddit, but this sub made me remember this one freaky time when I was 16 and a freaky dude approached me whilst I was going home. FYI, I am now 18 and I have thankfully moved an hour away from my previous house a couple months ago. I don't think I'll ever recover from this encounter, but I definitely did learn from it. So during the day that it had happened, I was really upset and had left college early as I had mental health concerns at the time. I'm in the UK, so college starts at 16. I was approached by this man who looked like he was in his 30s. I'm not sure, but he definitely wasn't 20 or 16. He wore this dark puffer jacket and had a weird gray bag, kind of like those family holiday bags that you take for camping, and he had a weird cap. Unfortunately, my brain cut out anything else he was wearing, so that's all I can mention. There might be missing fragments of this tragic incident, as my brain tends to cut out most traumatic things, but I'll try my best to word the things I do recall from this. Anyways, he asked me how I was doing, and me, being the gullible teen I was, I assumed he noticed I was upset and genuinely cared about my feelings and was just being nice. I'm a really anxious person from past incidents of being followed and harassed, but for some reason, I didn't feel weirded out at first. Anyways, me being the nice person I was, I took off my earphones and replied to him with a simple, "Oh, I'm a bit okay. How are you?" I figured maybe he was just a neighbor or something. I really hate myself for not finding it weird that he was wandering in such attire and approaching me in the streets. Actually, coming to think of it, I found it weird how nobody really stepped out. Like the area it happened was between two lanes of apartment houses, but I guess whoever probably did hear was too frightened or the situation was that silent to be heard. The conversation is pretty casual until he asks me which college I go to, which I blindly would have answered correctly, but something inside me ticked because he was clearly looking at my bright green lanyard which had my college logo on it as he asked, which felt really suspicious. I was nervous because I didn't know if I should lie or if that was a stupid idea, considering the answer was in his face. I ended up truthfully telling him which college I went to, which was obviously bad, but what could I do if I had my lanyard, which told him anyways? I started to feel uneasy, like I genuinely just wanted to cry in the moment, because I knew I couldn't just take my phone out and cry for help, because something in me told me that he might hit me or something. He instantly asks me if I'd like to go to his place right after, and I stutter an awful lie like, "Oh, my mom really wants me to collect her shopping." So he tells me it's okay, and that we could hang out another time, which finally rung a bell for me that I was definitely in danger, even if it wasn't serious. I don't know this guy. I have no clue if he's my neighbor, and he's approaching me whilst I'm alone on a quiet street. I tried to make excuses to walk away, but he just kept talking. I was kind of frustrated at this point, but even if I was mad that he was taking up my time, there wasn't really much I could do because I was smaller than him, and I was also terrified at the same time. Finally, the conversation is close to an end, and this guy asks me where I live. Figuring the safest thing I could do was lie, I point to a direction that didn't lead to my house, but he ended up laughing and correcting my arm to make sure it pointed directly to my house. I'm more creeped out at the fact he said, "Don't lie, you always come from down there," because I feel like that meant he had been watching me for days. By then, I shut the conversation down completely and tell him my mom's gonna be really pissy at me if I don't go home in this instant, considering I'd be home by now. And he smiles and watches me leave before continuing his talk. I'm obviously crying and ringing for my mom to let me in because we live in a 3-story apartment, and I tell her what happened. Like an average mother, she doesn't listen to me and goes outside to confront him, which upsets me a little considering it caused him to run away, so by the time we called the police, they couldn't find him. Speaking of police, on Neighborhood Watch, a couple of our actual neighbors mentioned how they fought him hanging around the primary school that was beyond the street that he interacted with me in too, which really grossed me out because I'm pretty sure I told him my age at the time too, 16. My neighbors unfortunately did not have any sort of CCTV footage of the man and I, aside from one lady, but for some reason she was completely refusing to hand it over to my mom, from what I heard, which is unfortunate. I really am thankful I never felt nice enough to say okay to going over to his house, and I'm thankful I never saw him again. What I'm not thankful for is the fact I always feel like I'm being watched. I have no idea if that's a trauma thing or just normal, but I really hate it. So weird guy with that weird puffer jacket, let's never meet again.
The second story.
So my story happened a few years ago when I was 10 or 11. At that time, my mom and dad had just divorced, and my mom moved into a small apartment. The building had 2 apartments per floor, right across from each other. In the first few months, we never really saw the neighbor who lived in front of us, but suddenly we started seeing him more often. I remember the first time I saw him, it was behind the building, in the small garden. He was there with his dogs, and I don't know, I felt scared. Not just scared in a usual way, but this feeling like something was wrong. It was like he was staring at me, but not in a normal way. I couldn't explain it, but it made me feel uneasy. There was something about him, his presence, that felt strange. Even though I couldn't pinpoint what exactly it was, it just felt wrong. A few days later, he came to our apartment and asked my mom if he could buy me toys and even underwear. My mom was scared. I don't really know what happened next, but I just know she kicked him out of our apartment right away. Then, about 2 weeks later, it was around midnight. My room was right next to the front door, and I suddenly started hearing knocking. But it wasn't regular knocking. It was like someone was trying to force the door open by jiggling the handle. It started slow at first, but then it got faster and faster. I could hear it, and my heart started racing. I was frozen in fear. I tried to get up to wake my mom or even just look through the peephole, but I couldn't move. I was so scared that my body just wouldn't cooperate. I know it wasn't a dream or anything. I knew it was real. I could feel the panic in my chest. After that, my mom and I moved out quickly, and we never saw him again. But since then, I've developed this weird paranoia that never really goes away. It's like my brain keeps playing tricks on me. I hear a little noise, and suddenly I'm convinced someone's in the house. I keep imagining things that aren't there, like someone hiding in the hallway, watching me from the dark. I know it sounds irrational, but it doesn't feel that way in the moment. It's like my body freezes, my heart races, and I can't move, just like that night. And it comes in waves. Some days I'm totally fine, and others it all comes back, stronger than ever. I start thinking someone might come back, that someone might already be inside. Even when I lock the doors, double-check everything, I can't fully shake the feeling. It's exhausting, and I hate that it still has this power over me. It's honestly not fun. I feel ridiculous sometimes, but it happens out of nowhere, and I just can't stop the fear. It's completely irrational, but it's there, and sometimes it feels like I can't escape it. And a few years later, someone actually broke into our house. It was a guy who was drunk or high, and I don't think he had bad intentions. He was just lost. But that didn't make it any less scary. The paranoia is still there, even though I try to remind myself it's just my brain playing tricks on me. Anyway, that's my story. I know it's not the scariest one, and it probably won't be as interesting to others, and it's my first one, but I just needed to share it. I don't know how to get over it. If anyone has had similar experiences or feelings, I'd be happy to talk about it. Thanks.
The third story. Fair warning before I get into it. I am not the greatest writer, but I will try my best for this one. If only for the sake of those who may try to read. I'm still not entirely sure if this belongs, even after reading the "What belongs on here" message, but here we go. This happened a few days ago from when I'm writing today. Where I live, we have honestly a lot of parks, but as two teenage girls going to hang out with guys, me and my friends obviously picked the biggest one, where there's more to do and less people around. For some context, I'll just say this park is down the street from a few halfway houses and work releases for recently released criminals. And a lot of the time, the ones who get the days out and don't have anywhere to go end up at this park just to have some time away. So more likely than not, when me and my friends go to hang out or do things teenagers shouldn't, there's already a few tweakers and sketchy people there that we have to watch out for. This day in particular, the guys we were with were boring us more than usual, so we were just sitting on the sidewalk, talking and halfway listening to them, when a girl walked up to us. While I am not naive or stupid, especially in this park, and especially where I live, I am a girl and I won't turn away from a young girl who is crying, upset, missing her shoes and phone. The girl, I'm going to avoid saying her name, and a lot of the names in this story, asked me if she could use my phone to make a call. I of course had the thought that this girl might run away with my phone, but again, I'd rather help if she actually needed it than not. So I offer her my phone, and she holds it for a few minutes before beginning to cry again because she can't seem to remember anyone's number. I tell her it's okay, and she begins to break down and tell us how she doesn't seem to remember what happened to her last night. She tells us she was with a man and went out for drinks to just have fun, when all of a sudden he got very angry, and she can't remember anything that happened after that, just being found in a parking lot and being taken to the local hospital where she was treated for a head injury and very obvious bruises all over her body. She said they refused to give her a rape kit, and then they dropped her off at this park because she didn't remember how to get home. She kept apologizing and saying she didn't mean to ruin our day, but at this point, me and my friend no longer care about the guys we're with, just about getting this girl help. I offered to call 911, and she shares concern about how the police won't care because she's a woman of color, and I can understand that, being one myself. We got her blankets and food and whatever she needed and promised we would take her to the hospital instead of calling an ambulance, mostly because I knew she didn't want to deal with police again or get into another ambulance right away. We said we would lobby for her and stay with her the entire time, but she didn't love the idea, and I could tell she was getting agitated and aggressive towards us. This was the first red flag. When my friend left to go get her car from across the park, she shared with me she was scared they would put her back into the psych ward, which I didn't know the story and couldn't promise they wouldn't. I could only promise that we would go with her and stay as much as we were allowed. But she kept crying and asking us to take her to a local store. So we, not wanting to upset her more and make it worse, decided to take her. The store was only a few miles away from the park we were at, so it was no big deal. But the whole ride, the girl kept digging in her bag, and that's when I first realized I felt a little uneasy about the situation. She didn't seem to take her hand out of the bag the whole 7-minute ride, and until we got there, she seemed to be staring at me and talking to herself. I didn't think much of it because she had gone through a traumatic experience, and I wasn't going to minimize this. On arrival to the store, she instructs us to take her to the back of the store where 2 men are waiting. She gets out of the car and runs toward the men, crying and breaking down, but the man stands still, not making any moves to comfort her or show any empathy I thought would be normal in this situation. This man was gripping her wrists and not even looking at her. This was another red flag. At this point, I already know that something isn't right, and this man is not going to give this girl any help. When my friend finished explaining the situation, the man starts to say that they were going to take care of the situation, and if we wanted, we could come with. While we did say we were going to stay, I didn't see the point anymore, and I didn't want to go with this man, and I think that was obvious to my friend. My friend said we could follow in our car if they needed someone to explain to the hospital, but the man insists we all take his car, which is a smaller car and not big enough to fit all of us, which my friends would be. He gives the girl a look, and she starts walking back towards us, mentioning how we said we would stay with her, and she's not actually crying anymore, just making the face like she is. And when we kept saying we could go with in our car, the girl reached for my friend and started getting aggressive and yelling at her. She's holding my friend's arm at this point and not letting her go. I start trying to get her to let go of my friend's arm, who obviously is freaking out a little, and this girl is just yelling and screaming in her face. The man starts saying to me, how's he supposed to believe that we weren't a part of it and probably hurt the girl, and we're just bringing her back now and we needed to go with him. He grabs my arm and starts trying to pull me toward the car without making a scene, and even though I was scared, I'm not a person to freeze under pressure, so I start pulling back, trying to get away from this man. But I'm not a very strong teenager, and this man is definitely going to get me into the car. But before he could, my friend pushes the girl's arm off of her and starts to scream. The kind of scream that only comes from a teenage girl and the kind that gets people to look. The man drops my arm and pushes me away and drags the girl from the park into his car before driving off and leaving us standing in the parking lot. At this point, we're freaking out and get into the car. We don't know what to do at this point, and stupidly, I'm still worried about the girl in the park because I don't think my mind really wrapped around the fact that she was trying to get us to get into the car with that man. We called 911 and explained the whole situation from the start, even the beginning story of the girl, and they said they would get back to us with some information. We've gotten a few calls from the police in the past few days, and the summary of the story that we got from them was that the woman we had tried to help had been at the hospital the night before, but not for what she said. She was there because she was found having mental health problems, which was common for her, as well as being brought in for drug abuse. The man in the parking lot, however, was not her boyfriend or her family member. They still don't know who he was to her, just that he had been charged with aggravated kidnapping on multiple occasions. So crying girl in the park and man in the parking lot, let's not meet again.
The fourth story. This is a long one. Bear with me. A bit of context before I begin. I, 21 female, work in the hospitality industry, specifically doing graveyard shits, usually running from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I have seen and dealt with some of the most insane experiences. I could probably write a book at this point, but this particular experience was one of the most frightening. I was brought up to be caring, empathetic, and understanding. These core values mean a lot to me, and I live by them. On numerous occasions, I've been told that constantly having this mentality could lead to me being targeted by people with ill intentions, and I didn't believe that. It's nice to be nice, after all. But in hindsight, after everything that's happened, I've learned to be a bit more skeptical. Usually on these graveyard shifts, there's 2 of us in the building at all times, and when we finish our work, we are basically free to sit down and relax for the remainder of our shift, or at least until the morning manager arrived at roughly 6 a.m. So I did just that, finished my tasks, and sat down in the main area of the building to have a late-night snack and watch some reels on my phone, as you do. My coworker decided he would take a nap, as it was roughly 3 a.m. at this point, and nobody was around. Fine by me. About 20 minutes passed when I heard a commotion near the bar area. Obviously, I looked up from my phone only to meet the eyes of this man, about 40 maybe, just standing at the bar counter. This wasn't unusual. Oftentimes, people would come down to grab some water or a smoke before heading back to bed. I thought nothing of it and went back to doom scrolling on my phone.
Sorry, excuse me. I let out a sigh, thinking to myself, what could this man possibly want from me at 3:30 a.m.? I stood up and asked if he was okay, and apologized for being on my phone, hoping he wouldn't complain to my manager in the morning. He responded, but I couldn't quite pick up what he was saying. I walked over to the bar and kindly asked him to repeat himself, apologizing for not hearing him. Is it okay if I have some water? He was shaking, almost nervous, soft-spoken, and honestly non-threatening, bar the fact he was about 6 feet tall, and I am 5 feet tall. Of course, I said yes, and went to walk away when he stopped me. I'm sorry, is it okay if I talk to you for a while? My mom is dying in hospital, and I can't sleep. Looking back, I'm kicking myself for not making up some excuse about needing to do work, but I agreed to stay and talk with him. Stupid, fucking empathy. He asked if I smoked, and I do, so I said yes. He then asked me to step outside to smoke and talk, and I stupidly agreed. We talked about his mom, and I tried my best to comfort him. I'd just recently had someone pass away, so this topic of conversation hit particularly hard. He thanked me for being so kind and continued to talk about his life, how he used to be homeless, but he moved in with his sister and got back on his feet, and that they were both staying here due to the circumstances, but were not from this city. I listened and occasionally responded by nodding. It was a polite conversation, but then something changed. Are there cameras out here? I wouldn't want you getting in trouble for being out here. How this didn't register in my mind as a red flag is unbelievable. How gullible can you be? Anyway, thankfully I didn't respond with yes or no. Just assured him I wouldn't get into trouble for being outside smoking. He seemed disappointed with my answer, presumably because he didn't get any information about where the cameras were placed. The conversation kept getting weirder and creepier. None of this I realized. I just saw a sad man needing a friend. Yes, I know, I'm stupid, and I'm angry at myself too. Eventually, some form of fight or flight activated in my brain. I told him I was cold and was going to head in. Come here, give me a hug, it'll warm you up. What the fuck? At this point, I'm creeped out, but thinking maybe he's just bad at picking up social cues or something. So I declined and walked inside. He followed. He asked if he could grab a coffee and sit with me for a while. And being by myself, on the verge of a panic attack, and not wanting to get on this guy's bad side, I agreed. We sat there and he continued to ask odd questions. Do you have kids? No. Do you want kids? Do you have a boyfriend? I told him I had a fiancé. A lie. Do you love him? I mean no harm in asking these questions. You're so beautiful. At this point, my brain was screaming at me to get out of this situation. I had to think quick. Come sit next to me. I won't bite. Fuck, no. I quickly made up the excuse that I had to get the area ready for the morning and that my manager would be showing up any minute. At the same time, my coworker woke from his nap and passed by to get a coffee. This startled the man, and he stood up before saying, "Tell your mom I was asking for her," forcing a hug, and left to go to his room. Oh my fucking God! He was pretending to be a family friend so that my coworker wouldn't be suspicious of him. I stood there, in shock, not even being able to speak. My brain was still trying to process what the fuck just happened. I kept quiet, helping my coworker set up for the morning, as it was now 5:30 a.m. Yes, I was dealing with this man for 2 fucking hours. I sat down at 5:50 and waited for my manager to show up so that I could finally go home, hoping that man wouldn't come back before I got to leave. Wishful thinking. He showed up behind me out of nowhere. I think I'll go to the shops. I'm out of smokes. Okay, I need to know this. Why? I kept silent before he asked me for my pen, which I gave him, and he walked off again. He returned 5 minutes later and gave me back my pen. I wrote a note for you. stood close to me, dropped a piece of cardboard behind my back, and walked away. In hindsight, I see how sneaky this was. He made sure no one could see him dropping that note. I picked it up. It was pretty weird, but one line in particular made my skin crawl. "Wear tighter work pants for me next time. They'd look good, harmless." I ran to the office and sat in front of the CCTV monitor, seeing exactly where he was. He was standing outside the building, pacing, waiting. He then walked back into the building, and on the camera I could see that he was looking for me, but thankfully, at this point I was in the office, so he walked back outside, starting pacing again and waiting, before he hid himself out of sight behind a corner. I told my manager, who told me to exit via the back entrance, which I did. I was shaking, checking behind me every few seconds, every noise making me run faster and faster until eventually I reached the safety of my home. I sat down, processing what had just happened, when suddenly my phone vibrated. "Hey, it's Name. Thanks for the chat. Talk soon." How the fuck did he get my number? I have never blocked someone quicker in my life. I told the higher-ups what had happened and didn't return to work for at least a month until he was permanently barred from my workplace. I still fear I'll see him somewhere, that he'll be waiting. Thankfully, I haven't seen him since and don't wish to. And if you're reading this, let's not meet again.
The fifth story. This happened when I was 13 or 14. I was in middle school. The school was about 10 minutes away by car. My parents worked out an arrangement with our neighbor, Jake, who was the same year as me. I think Jake was a normal kid. Our friend groups didn't overlap, so we didn't really see each other at school aside from carpooling. I don't remember the exact arrangement, but basically, my parents would drop us both off at school together, and Jake's mom would pick us up. Jake was usually pretty quiet in the car. His mom was really chatty. I had no issue with that. She always wanted to know what was going on at school. I wasn't going to share all the gossip with her, but I told her generally, like how we had a spring play, how there was a science fair, etc. I would have about 10 minutes of conversation with her, and we'd get back to the apartment complex where we lived. Then one day, things got weird. Jake was sitting in the back seat that day. I was sitting in the front seat. His mom said, "I think you and Jake would make such a cute couple. You should be his girlfriend." I didn't know what to say to that. I think I mumbled something like, I don't know about that, and stared out the window, trying to act like it wasn't happening. Why was she bringing this up? She didn't really know me. I barely even knew Jake. I didn't say anything more in the car. I remember just feeling a really weird awkwardness in the air. I didn't even turn to make eye contact with Jake. I figured he was probably just as uncomfortable as I was. When my parents came home that evening, I told them. My mom and dad kind of shrugged. This hadn't been a serious violation. It wasn't as if Jake's mom had hit me or anything like that. But my parents said I shouldn't carpool with Jake anymore. I think my dad's exact words were, "You don't need to be around that." I didn't want to tell anyone at school about this. This wasn't Jake's fault. I didn't want to make him feel bad or embarrassed by saying anything to him or go around telling people about this. I kept quiet on this. I stopped carpooling with them, but I didn't tell anyone at school or anyone else. I barely saw Jake at school, and we'd just walk past each other when I did. But that wasn't the end of it. After that, Jake's mom started showing up in places where I would be. I used to go to the park on Saturdays to play frisbee. Now I'd see Jake's mom there. She'd smile at me. She caught on to how I went there Saturday mornings, and she'd come every Saturday morning. I had previously never seen her there. There were other examples like that. Also, Jake's mom showed up to the nail salon I went to. I had never seen her there before, but I saw her twice the same month after we stopped carpooling. Maybe this was all coincidence, but I know it wasn't.
One day, she came up to me at the library and said something like, "It's so nice to see you here. I bet Jake would love it if you came over to visit sometime soon. You two should hang out more." I didn't know what to say. All I could do was give this awkward smile and mumble something like, "Yeah, sure, maybe." Eventually, I had to tell my parents about this. They had a talk with Jake's mom and told her to leave me alone. That was the end of it, as far as I know. It was just a really weird situation. From that point onward, we'd almost never see each other. I hope that means she stopped paying attention to me.
The sixth story. I'm from the Netherlands. While writing what happened to me, I realize my English writing is shockingly bad, so apologies. I use Google Translate. I am 21 and live in a village just outside the big city. This village is located on a large wooded area. There is a place where me and my friends often come to smoke or drink in the evening. We call it Nature Spot. It is a wooded dune-like area with a large island in the middle. To get to this island, you have to cross a small wooden bridge. The nearest houses are quite far away, about a kilometer. I don't know what a mile is, from the place, so at night it is a quiet, dark place. In the winter, it is bare, wet, and muddy, and nobody really comes there. This happened 3 weeks ago. That Friday night, all my friends couldn't hang out. I don't have the most of friends, and I wanted to go to the island to smoke and drink by myself. I don't mind hanging out alone on occasions like this. Sometimes I enjoy it when no one is around me and it's just me, nature, and my weed. I know the place well, and I carry a knife with me just in case when I go hanging out alone in the woods at night. I'm not a scared person. I often walk through the woods at night with headphones and my music at the loudest. I do this to create some tension because my life been pretty boring the past months, and every time I go there, especially at night, with smoke or drink, I always get an exciting gut feeling. Just to be there, all alone in the dark on that island. So I walk through the wooded area towards the island. It's now around 12:30 at night. I have nothing to do tomorrow, so I hang around the places a bit. Before I cross the bridge, I take off my headphones to listen if I can hear any sound coming from the island, just in case there are people or homeless people on the island and I come walking there with music in my ear. After a few minutes, hoping that I am alone, I plan to smoke a joint at a tree in the middle of the island that we call the Witch's Tree. This because in the winter it looks like Blair Witch movie setting. I walk onto the island towards the Witch's Tree with music on. I walk towards the tree, and at the same time, coming up to the tree, I see a naked man around his 30s or 40s, probably literally standing on a log that's pretty high from the ground, right in front of me, looking down on me. Yes, he stood still in a literal T-pose in the dark, all naked, when I spotted him, which made me really scared in a flash. So it was just a flash second before my heart dropped and I jumped back immediately and my headphones fell from my hands into my hands. I first scream out to the man, "Hey, what the F do you?" out of panic and fear. I jogged backwards while keeping my eyes on the dark pathway. At this point, my whole body is filled with fear and adrenaline. I did not know what to do or say, so I yelled while jogging back, "Yo, ik zag je wel. Ik heb een mes. Kom, ik ga steken." This means, like, "I saw you. Come to me. I got a knife." Because he looked like he was ready to chase me. He was going to.
I have used this tactic before in forested areas, encountering homeless people or suspicious people at night, nowhere near this location, where I yell out, "Come to me if I have to create a kind of psychological reaction, where I invite the perpetrator to come my way instead of showing fear or freezing. Only when I carry a knife, and of course I'm not going to stab, only if I really, really have to." But I was still super scared, so now I'm standing on the bridge shaking and waiting. I wanted to make sure he would follow me before I ran. I wanted to call my friend to tell him that there is a naked man at the tree. He would answer and come. At this moment, out of the dark from the other side of the bridge, the naked man is walking towards me, literally out of nowhere. My heart dropped. Yes, he was naked, but what was even scariest was his face and eyes, literally in the moonlight, what looked like a zombie, and he had his arms straight up when he walked out of the bush, like he was caught by the police. He walked arms straight up over the bridge towards me, which was a really scary sight, and also because the bridge is super wobbly, has almost no support in terms of firmness, nothing. So it is almost impossible to get over it without holding on to both railings. But he literally just walked straight ahead without any drop or stop, like he was walking over water. I run back while shouting, "What the f*** are you doing?" Then he starts screaming like a drug addict and starts running towards me. I quickly run away through the dark forest back to the park where the houses are close by. There's like 5-minute walk of dark pathway, and while sprinting down, I could hear him sprint after me and literally saying he was going to eat me if he caught up. Just the thought of a naked man running after me in the dark, and also what happened before, made me run so fast, like I never ran so fast ever. I totally forget my knife, like I did not want to stay there a second longer. I even stumbled and fell face first in a thorny bush and was lost for a few seconds while hearing his screaming come louder and louder. But I was really scared and fast because so much adrenaline and everything unfolded pretty fast, and I ripped my jacket and lost my second bike keys. I made it home and didn't even sleep. Homeless people in the Netherlands do not behave like this one did. I have never seen or heard even stories about homeless people moving like that or anything. These are really the stories you hear from America, where homeless people are on flakka or something and turn into literal zombies. Those are the vibes I got from this incident. That next morning, very early, me and my friend went back to the island after I told him what had happened. And literally, when we got there, I remember standing on the bridge and throwing stones towards the bush to see if the man was there. And the bridge was so bumpy that we could hardly get to the other side. And that while the man from that night literally walked at a walking pace with his hands in the air like it was easy. There was also no clothing, mattress, nothing that showed that someone had slept there on that island or even stayed there. Since then, I have never gone there again. Literally a few days ago, I saw what looked like the same man. It was him, hiding from a woman who was walking her dog in the park when I cycled past. He seems possessed. He was talking to the tree while he was hiding from people, and he only had a blanket to cover himself. After seeing this, I thought back to that night and decided to tell the story and share here. It turns out that he escaped from a mental institution not far from where I live. Police is still looking for him.
The seventh story. This is the first time I've written this story down and not just related to a friend. And although there are mentions of photographs taken in this story, the phone and MacBook I had them on have all since been replaced, so I can't post them. But I swear this story is 100,000,000% true. I used to live in a pretty nice area of a major city. Really cute streets, lots of old buildings, and it was safer to walk at night than some other neighborhoods. My only problem was I didn't exactly have the money to afford one of the nicer places nearby. I shared a single building with 5 other apartments, and I was on the ground floor. My upstairs neighbor had a dog that would bark at everything.
I was told she was triggered by the sounds of children screaming, and we lived between a park and a kindergarten. I will never forgive myself for not confronting that asshole neighbor about his inability to properly care for that creature. Anyway, like I said, the building was old, so it needed maintenance all the time. The owners were a family from Chinatown, and when sending the grandfather as a handyman to try to fix everything with caulk didn't work, eventually professionals did get called, though never when it was inconvenient for tenants, only when the building was at risk of being structurally damaged. At the time, I was working a night job as a custodian for a government facility. It was fine, the pay was great, and the workload wasn't too much, but it was the disrespect I couldn't stand. Eventually, I did quit, but when all this happened, I was still there and thus sleeping in late, usually not up until close to 11. This would become especially inconvenient for me when the landlady would give out my phone number for someone who needed to get into the building since I was on the ground floor directly next to the door. Illegal, by the way. Tenants do not work for the building owners. It's actually the opposite, but I digress. I had been told by my landlady the night before that someone might be getting in contact with me to get into the building, but I never got a text from anyone and figured they must have gotten in on their own. I was awoken by the sound of men trying to heave equipment down the narrow alleyway beside our house, which acted as a small area for trash, but also gave access to the back ground floor property that had a patio. I sat up awake in my shitty loft bed my dad and I had made and went scrambling down the ladder to go to the alleyway. I am a plant person, and many of my beautiful and uncommon outdoor plants had been in the alleyway and stacked inside or on top of the air conditioning cage on the window that led to my bedroom. I had to go make sure these grunting, groaning, working men carrying huge rolls of tar paper down the tiny congested space would not knock anything over, and decided I would just bring it all inside between them putting down a roll and returning to their truck for another. I had grabbed 3 of my ferns and a bromeliad when a few of them came back up the alleyway. I was sort of shocked like a deer in headlights as I was trying not to drop my green babies and dressed in my skimpy pajamas. I was in great shape at the time and got approached by men with sexual intentions almost every day. It was one of the reasons I loved being a night custodian. I got to wear shapeless coveralls and be left alone with a mop and my music. Being caught here like this was humiliating and scary. The men, now squeezing down the alleyway, were clearly roofers based on their equipment and the clothes they wore, and a few of them were staring. I apologized very quickly and told them I just wanted to get my stuff out of the way, and 1 or 2 of them gave me a "no worries" or a "that's okay," and one said something like, "We would never let anything happen." I nodded, sort of shyly, embarrassed by the scramble of it all. I began handing some plants through the bars of the AC cage and onto the small ledge inside of my bedroom window. I guess I didn't think about it at the time, but I had basically identified to these guys that not only that I lived in this building, but on this floor and in this room, having clearly entered from a side door that connected to the narrow alley. They spent their day on the roof, were done by nightfall, and nothing weird happened. 2 days later, I was woken early in the morning by a phone call from a number with my city area code. It was an unusual hour, so I answered just in case it was someone who needed to get into the building, since it hadn't come up as spam likely or anything like that. On the other end, I heard what sounded like the voice of a drunk man asking for Frank or Fan. He was slurring his words and had an accent, and I asked him over and over again to say it again until I finally told him he had the wrong number. Later, I woke up again when I heard commotion in the alleyway from my loft bed, but was sleeping in and didn't worry about it, having no belief that the wrong number call I had just received and a bit of noise in the alleyway, which we also shared with another building, had anything to do with one another. I fell back asleep. I heard a bang and a crash from the interior hallway that briefly woke me up a 3rd time, but then fell asleep again. When I got up around 10:30, I went to see if the shared washing machine was open in our basement. I noticed the hallway was a bit darker, and that one of the wall sconces had been disassembled with no light bulb and some broken glass on the floor. I was a bit groggy still and didn't really process it too deeply, but what snapped me out of it was when the light bulb in the basement didn't turn on. The basement of this building was so freaky, long and deep with a low ceiling, full of crap from this and other rental properties owned by our landlord, plenty of spider webs and their venomous occupants, black-footed sack spiders, and you had to turn your back on the long, dark, partially obstructed basement to use the washer and dryer. It was just a very unsettling experience, and I would not go down there without the light on. When I turned away from the pitch black, I noticed the owner's vacuum, which was usually near the side door entrance, wasn't in its place. I went back to my room to organize my laundry, figuring I would wait until I had the courage and split it into whites and colors and darks and sheets and towels in the meantime. When I glanced over to my open window, I noticed something that hadn't been there before, sitting at an angle on the windowsill. A book with a revolver-style pistol on the cover and a paper card sticking out of it. I don't remember what the note itself was, something about wanting to give me the book, but it was signed -phone, which freaked me out. Was this left here by the man who had called me on my phone? I immediately texted my third-floor neighbor, who I'll call Vanessa. She and I bonded over our terror of the long, scary basement, and I sent her a photo of the book and the strange note. She replied, "Hold on," and a few seconds later, I heard her knocking on my door. When I let her in, she looked completely freaked out, and I tried to ease the tension by lamenting the broken hallway sconce. Vanessa told me she'd gone to use the laundry this morning before anybody else, and the light hadn't worked, same as me. She had begun descending the stairs when she thought she could hear something, or maybe sensed something, and called out into the dark. She had said, "Hello?" to see if anyone was down there, expecting the voice of one of our 3 other female neighbors and one feminine gay man. A man with a deep voice and accent said back to her that he was just fixing the light, but she said she could barely understand him because he was slurring his words. She turned around and immediately sprinted back up the stairs to return to her apartment. She said she'd yelled down again around an hour later and no one replied, but wanted me to come down with her to make sure nobody was there anymore. I had 2 headlamps from work and a flashlight, and we went down the stairs together, practically crawling out of our skin, holding on to the other for dear life as we shouted into the dark. We saw that someone had broken the light bulb in the slot and brought down the vacuum to try to clean it, but it failed. They had also stolen a container of detergent near the machines, as a trail of powdered soap went up the steps in multiple spots and into the hallway. Our only male neighbor didn't seem weirded out or concerned at all. In fact, he thought we were being dramatic and basically went about his day as if nothing had happened. We contacted our landlady asking if someone was supposed to be coming by and that they had called me before coming in. She just blamed us for leaving the side door unlocked. I asked her if she could please verify the number that had called with the roofing people to see if maybe it was someone on their team, but she flat out refused, saying she and the company had worked together many times and had a good relationship, as if that had anything to do with the drunk man who had walked into our house and seemingly taken or destroyed all the light bulbs. Again, I don't have photos of the note, the book, or the basement mess anymore, but if I am able to get access to them, I will post an update. This was over a year ago, and I no longer live there, but I still wonder if it was one of the construction workers on a bender who seen me the other day in the alley, who walked into the building after he had been able to and just opened the first door he saw, the basement. Who knows why he disassembled the sconce, or how the basement bulb had been broken. I wish I had had the thinking to ask neighbors across the street for their ring cams, but I will truly never know who that person was.
The 8th story. So, me, 16FE, and my boyfriend, 16MA, decided to go to a random party with a lot of people we didn't know. I know it was stupid, but we don't usually do anything like that.
It was an outdoor party at a school one of my friends invited me to. Anyways, we drank, then headed to my friend's house. Not that long after we get there, my friend and her mom start arguing. Her mom hits her, and we all decide we should leave. A lot happened, but me, my boyfriend, and two other people we started talking to at the party, a guy and a girl, wanted McDonald's, so we start heading to a bus stop. But the bus stop closest to where we were, the bus was first going after a while, so we decide to walk pretty far to another stop. Dumbest idea ever. We get there and chill for a bit. It's about 1 a.m., and the only other people at the bus stop are two very drunk guys at around 25 years old. A few minutes later, two guys around our age start walking toward us, and they immediately start talking to us when they reach the bus stop. The next few lines are just quotes because it's easier to write what they said that way. M, guy friend from party. A, girlfriend from party. BF, my boyfriend. Guy 1, were you guys at a party too? M, yeah, what about you? Guy 2, yeah, look at this watch I just stole from someone. And then he proceeded to show us a pink Apple Watch. We obviously get kind of startled because what the F? M, oh, why? Guy 2, we're gonna sell it, that's why. The conversation was really weird for a bit, and then they suddenly asked to see the guys' bags, BF and M. We kind of get where this is going because people beating others up for stuff is pretty common in my country. They both show their bags, and BF has a Trap Star bag, and M has an LV bag. So, of course, they want it. Guy 1, can I try your bag, M? M, nah, I know you guys are just gonna take it. Guy 2, no we won't. M, I've had stuff stolen before, I know how it goes. Guy 2 pulls his shirt up and shows us a very big, like kitchen knife, saran wrapped into his stomach. Guy 1 did the same and said, do you want to do it the easy way or the hard way? Well, weird thing I forgot to write before, and I'm too lazy to go up and change as I'm on phone. They had called a person through Snapchat, and I recognized the voice and name of. I go to call that person and tell him his friends are morons, and I don't really know what happens as I walked away to talk to him. When I got back, M had given his bag, and Guy 1 and Guy 2 looked really happy. We all are scared out of our minds and incredibly aware of everything. The two other people at the bus stop start to get cocky and start shit-talking to Guy 1 and 2. Before we know it, Guy 1 and 2 start beating the shit out of one of the other people, and I look away in horror as I meet the eyes of a very pregnant woman. I could see she was scared AF. The bus came right after Guy 1 and 2 make that other person pass out. His tooth fell out, and his friend looked so scared. Everyone was. Guy 1 and 2 get on the bus like nothing happened, and it didn't seem to affect them in any way. They just beat the shit out of that guy. The bus is packed, and we end up having to stand incredibly close to them. M overheard them say they wanted to beat us too. We got out of that bus as soon as we could and walked to McDonald's the several miles there was to get there. We are all basically shitting our pants, and we all keep looking around making sure they aren't there. We got done, and me and BF go to our bus stop to get home. One stop in, and guess what? Guy 1 and 2 are waiting on the bus there. We hopped out and hoped they didn't see us. We walked our asses another several miles again, very scared and very stressed. When we made it home, we both felt relief and finally felt like we could relax. Now, some of you might wonder why the police was never called. In my country, the police are shit and legit don't function. They don't take anything seriously and won't do anything, or if they did, Guy 1 and 2 would get basically no punishment, and they would immediately go after us when their punishment was over. It wouldn't have helped, and we would end up in much more trouble. Guy 1 and 2, let's not meet. The 9th story.
Let me just say I was young and dumb when I met him. I'm 18 years old. I met him when I was 16. I was never in a relationship before him. I was a bigger girl and just had an extremely hard time getting guys to like me. I met him on Snapchat. I didn't realize it then, but he had love-bombed the hell out of me. I was so lost in the feeling of being wanted that I ignored the extreme red flags. After only a week of talking, he convinced me to meet him at his house to hook up. He lived almost an hour away from me, and I was a new driver. Anyways, how we met is not the point. He showed extreme signs of being a narcissist and even admitted to me that he believes himself to be a sociopath. But I never let the red flags keep me from leaving him. He was possessive over me and manipulated me into believing he was the only one there for me, made me cut off my friends, and even made me distance myself from my family. He cheated on me so many times. I caught him 3 times. He admitted to me that out of the 18 months we were together, he was faithful for 3, which is bullshit. He cheated on me the entire time. I had evidence of which, but in the end he kept lying to save his own ass. I have extreme abandonment issues due to my father. My abandonment issues aren't only about me. I have a deep fear of abandoning people who need someone. I thought he needed me. He was going into the Marines. His ship date was late June of 2024. A few days before he shipped off, I proposed to him. I know I'm fucking stupid. Don't get me started on how much I hate myself in this situation, but if you've ever been emotionally and psychologically abused, you can understand that you simply cannot think about yourself and your safety. You think about what is best for your abuser, so that they are happy, so that they don't have a reason to abuse you. We made it through boot camp. We sent letters all 13 weeks. It felt so magical to know someone loved me enough to stay true to our relationship through something difficult as long-distance military relationship. I loved him so much, I saved money to drive down to California to see him graduating. It was amazing and what I thought were the best days of my life. He was still quiet and reserved. He always was. I never saw a problem with it because he was his true self when he was with me. When he came home from California, he lived with me. He had a bad relationship with his parents and made me believe he had nowhere else to go. This was my mistake, because once he moved in, I was truly trapped. He did RA late August to late October. He shipped back off to California for his schooling, and so started our long distance again. One morning in March of this year, I woke up and checked my phone. If you've ever been cheated on and stayed, you just become paranoid. He had 2 Instagram accounts, one of which he blocked me on. I created another Instagram account just so I can watch his followers and his posts. He started following more and more women. On that day, he had posted on his main account a story that was hidden from me. He posted a joke about cheating on your dumb girlfriend. You don't joke about shit you have done. So again, I sent him a message explaining just how unfucking funny it was and how he knows how much that shit traumatized me. Afterwards, I was done. I messaged girls he followed on his other account and learned he was on dating apps. After that, it was the end of us. There was 3 days of us communicating. On April 2nd, I took his belongings to his parents' house and blocked him, told him to never contact me again. Everything was silent for a few weeks. I was healing. This man abused me for almost 2 years. He made me believe so many nasty things about myself and my family. I would go into more details, but at this point, this shit is a novel. One night, late April, I got a text on my phone. Package arrived. I was confused and responded with a question mark. The number told me there was something on my porch. When I opened my door, there was a notebook sitting there. Mind you, it was 11 p.m. at night, so I'm freaked the hell out. Front to back, this notebook was filled with letters from my ex. I refused to read it. He had gotten out of the Marines on a other than honorable discharge, and he moved to the city next to mine. He hated my town and how desolate it was. He moved 20 minutes away from me just so he could be close to me. He could have moved anywhere, but he moved to a town he hated just to be close. Also, he doesn't have a car, so he rode his bike 13 miles just to drop this on my porch. I gave the notebook to my parents and messaged the number back to never contact me again and to never come near my house or else I'll be calling the authorities. I blocked the number. That night, I slept in my parents' bedroom. I cried so much. At 1:30 a.m., I got another message on my phone from a different number than before, saying, "Can you honestly tell me you've enjoyed this past month?" It took this cycle 3 hours to have a new number and start texting me again. I sent a very long, nasty message describing just how great my life was without him, and again told him to not contact me. I had to change my number, my garage code, and my front door code. A few weeks later, I got 3 letters from him in the mail, all very possessive and nasty. One was a suicide note, describing exactly how and why he killed himself. I called his city's dispatch and sent a wellness check. He was alive. He told the officer that he was just upset. I had done a lot to try to get him into some sort of mental care. He refused time and time again. I told the officer to tell him directly that if he contacted me again in any way that I'd be filing for a stalking and harassment report. And lo and behold, a week or so later, I get a message on Facebook from a very, very fake account. All of its posts and information were clear indicators that it was him. Unfortunately, I had to read that notebook he left on my porch. And holy fucking shit, when I say he's crazy, he's fucking crazy. In the notebook, he admitted to lying to me about attempting suicide, lied to me about being hospitalized, and lied to me about going into psych. He said it was better for me to believe us breaking up made him suicidal. He also admitted to a lot of illegal activity, and that he cheated on every single girl he was with. The whole notebook traumatized me even more. I went to the police station and filed a report. 2 days after I filed the report, I got more letters in the mail from him. One admitted to him watching me from a hill outside my house, and the other was him trying to return our engagement rings that I left with his belongings. He told me that it was smart to change my phone number, but that I could not change my address, so he would keep sending me letters until he won me over again. The last 2 letters were sent from a different state. That means he moved away. I'm very happy that I don't have to worry about my physical safety anymore. But every week I get more and more letters. He's obsessed with me, and I simply don't understand why. He cheated because some fucked up part of his brain wasn't satisfied with me. And now that he's without me, he's literally going fucking crazy. I never want to see that man again. I am terrified of him. I still look over my shoulder thinking he'll be there, even though he moved. Every time I get a call or text from a random number, I think it's him and panic, even though I changed my phone number. I have nightmares of him. He mentally fucked me up so bad, and I can only realize that now that he's gone. I hope he stops sending me letters, or that he goes to jail. This will happen to another girl if he's not punished. I want justice for myself, but I also want to protect that future girl. I truly fucking hate him, and wish the worst for him.
The final story.
My name is Nolan, and I'm 24 now, but when all this happened, I was just 12. I live not far from Paris, but I've loved traveling since I was a kid. For 5 summers straight from 2009 to 2013, my mom signed me up for summer camps every July. Those camps were amazing. I traveled all over France, camping, hiking mountains, doing caving and rope courses. So many fun activities since I was young, and I loved every minute of it. Then came 2013, which turned out to be the worst year of my life and the last time I went to camp. That summer, the camp was on Île d'Oléron, an island in western France connected to the mainland by a big bridge. The island is known for being really hot in the summer, amazing local food, nice beaches, and especially a famous monument called Fort Boyard, an old prison in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean that once held criminals. The camp was set in the middle of nature. Imagine a group of small buildings arranged in an L shape. On one side was the entrance, and on the other was just thick bushes leading into the forest. The buildings were divided between the kids' dorms, the laundry room, the dining hall, and the instructors' dorms. At that time in my life, I was pretty rebellious and didn't like to listen. 2 of my friends, Malik and Enzo, came with me, so we were all set for a crazy time, maybe too crazy. Everything was fine during the first 6 days of camp, and we had so much fun. But on the 7th day, things started going wrong, mostly because of us. That night, we had a campfire game session, playing board games like Uno from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. After that, the instructors announced lights out and everyone went to their rooms. Malik, Enzo, and I shared a room, so we brushed our teeth and went to bed. About 25 to 30 minutes later, the instructors turned off all the lights. Around midnight, I came up with a terrible idea, a night walk in the forest with my 2 friends, even though we were only 12 or 13 years old. We opened our window, looked around quickly and saw that none of the instructors were awake. They were all asleep, probably too tired after the day's activities. We quietly crossed the camp courtyard, sneaking past the buildings, and entered the bushes on the far side of the site. We walked about 10 to 15 minutes into the forest. While walking, I was joking around and trying to scare my friends with creepy stories. Suddenly, we arrived at the fence of an old abandoned house. The house looked really run down and creepy, like something out of a witch's story. Being young and dumb, we decided to at least go into the garden. To our surprise, the gate was open, so we stepped inside. As soon as we started walking in the garden, we heard a huge, loud scream coming from a man with a deep, scary voice. We were so scared that at first we couldn't even understand what he was yelling. Then the front door of the house under the porch opened, and we saw a man running towards us. We panicked, nearly crying, and instantly reopened the gate behind us. We ran as fast as we could back toward the camp. We managed to get back and woke everyone up in the middle of the night, so stressed, scared, and panicked that I was crying a lot. The instructors obviously scolded us for being reckless and dangerous, but it was clear from our faces that we weren't making it up. We told them what happened and finally went back to our rooms. I couldn't sleep at all that night and kept replaying the scene in my head. One detail stuck with me thanks to the moonlight. The man limped and had a wooden leg. But even so, he ran really fast. I don't know why, but I had a very bad feeling about the whole thing. I wish that had been the end of the story, but no. On the 9th day, the last day of camp, we were outside doing various activities when the instructor asked if we had our swimsuits ready because we were going to the pool. I said no and that I needed to go get mine from my room, so I ran alone to the dormitory, about 10 meters away. I opened my door, then closed it behind me for some reason without turning on the light. Inside the room, since we had the shutters closed, it was almost completely dark, but some little holes let in a bit of moonlight. At that moment, about 5 meters from me, I saw a tall, human-like figure standing still. I couldn't see its face, just a silhouette. I didn't understand what was happening, but I was frozen and couldn't move. For what felt like an eternity, probably just 5 or 6 seconds, I suddenly turned, opened the door, and ran outside screaming that someone was in my room. I ran crying toward the center of the camp where everyone was. An instructor immediately went with some colleagues to check my room, but it was empty. Suddenly, the instructors called everyone to come to my room because they found something terrifying. On the floor was a piece of paper with the words, "I will come back tonight," written on it. I literally froze and cried twice as much as before. That night, the instructors stayed in pairs outside every door so nobody could enter any rooms. Thankfully, no one came back to my room that night. We left camp the next day, but because of those incidents, I never went back to camp after I was 13. It took me a long time to want to travel again with friends or family to places I didn't know. It wasn't until I was 19 that I dared to go on vacation again. When I told my mom about what happened, she told me I was incredibly stupid and brave at the time, for my age, and that I did the right thing because whoever was in my room that night didn't mean well, especially with that note left behind. But honestly, going in the forest was so freaking stupid. Like, I don't know why we went in that forest. Even 12 years later, questions still haunt me. What the freak was that person in my room? Was it the same man who chased us in the forest? What did he want? And how did he find my room? These questions kept me awake many nights, and I had a lot of nightmares. Like I said at the start, even if I mostly laugh about it now, sometimes I still get anxious over small things. So to the man in the woods who chased us and then appeared in my room, let's not meet ever, ever.
Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comments, and I will be very glad to receive your subscription to the channel.